So hello everyone and welcome. Have you ever played through a level and then thought, that was a really good level, but you didn't actually quite, you weren't quite able to put in words what actually made that stage or that level as good as it was? And then another point, you have a level that's like really bad, but you also can't quite put in words why that level was so bad. Or maybe you're a content creator yourself, creating some levels for like Hat in Time or Super Mario 64 hacks, any of those, where you like create a 3D platforming level and you don't quite understand what it actually is that makes level good or bad, or what you should be doing at any point. Don't worry guys, I got you covered. So this is my new series, Musings on Level Design, and I kind of want to start out the entire thing by just talking about what actually is level design, because before we talk about it we need to actually understand what it is. And I'm going to give you a lot of pointers along the way already. Like, I mean, if you just want a few quick pointers, you can just watch this video alone, and I'm just going to very quickly mention some things that maybe you haven't quite thought about yet. So first off, level design, the way I see it, there's nothing official or scientific or anything, but the way I see it, level design is the entire process that starts from the idea in a designer's head to actually having a finished level that can be played and enjoyed by the public. That's pretty much what level design all entails. Now, compare that to game design. Game design is pretty much something more all-encompassing when it comes to a game. Like, game design is something that permeates the actual core of the gameplay that you're doing, like, in total throughout the entire game. While level design is pretty much something that only pertains to each individual level. Now, the actual process that I said, from like coming from the idea to the finished level, well, what is that idea that I mean? Well, usually great levels start with the designer coming up with a unique idea or a theme in their head. You want to have something that you can base everything that you do off of. And a lot of times is where it's really difficult to just say, oh, like, just come up with a cool idea, like a huge theme or something to base everything off of. But that can be really difficult. That's why something that I always am a big fan of, and that is very easy to do, is just take any two things together, anything, doesn't matter what it is, take any two things together, mash them together, and see if you can come up with some ideas on how to create a level around that. And let's say I take water and castle. These are the two ideas. I take the idea water and castle. Now I could create, like, let's say I create an underwater castle with windows where you can see outside. Maybe there's places where the windows break down and water floods in and rooms flood, and you have to avoid traps and make sure the castle doesn't get flooded. Or maybe you want the castle to get flooded so you can go to other places. That's very complicated, but you see where this is going. Or maybe it's just actually a castle where, like, a waterfall is falling on top of the castle and is like sort of enveloping the castle with like water falling everywhere, and you have to be careful where you go. There might be passages hidden by water falling down. Like, oh my god, suddenly you can think of all these amazing things to do, and all I did was I just took two ideas, mashed them together, and be like, what can I do with that? Let's do one more. Let's do spooky and digital. Yeah, spooky and digital. So you could have, like, do you remember those Gex 3D levels where you were like inside of a computer? You could like do that, like you're inside of a computer, but it's like haunted. It's like really dark. The lighting is fairly minimal, but then there's like ghosts around, and maybe there's like spooky traps or something that spook on you. It's not really trying to be like in your face, like jump scare, but it's still very spooky. But you're inside of a computer, and the entire, oh my god, wow, amazing! Just mash two things together, and you've already done a really great job of hopefully coming up with something that you can base your entire level off of. Next up, now that you have some sort of idea or theme in your head, you want to come up with some sort of like blueprints. It doesn't have to be actual blueprints that you write down or whatever, but like in your head, come up with ways of using the mechanics and things that the game gives you to create some sort of like, yeah, some sort of mechanic that you can complement the idea or theme with. Like, for example, let's say I have the spooky digital theme, and I want to come up with some ways of using the way that, for example, Hat in Time gives me some of the mechanics. What of the mechanics of Hat in Time can I use that complement this theme? Well, spooky, definitely Dweller Mask. We're definitely using Dweller Mask if you're doing a spooky theme. If we're doing digital and it's together with Spooky, we're gonna try and using some very weird lighting. Maybe we're gonna take a look at the lighting stuff and see how we can do stuff with the lighting. With the Dweller Mask, so what do we do? With the Dweller Mask, we could have multiple walls that we kind of need to jump through, but they are on different phases. If you don't know the Dweller Mask and you're watching this without knowing about Hand in Time, Dweller Mask is a mask that you can toggle on and off, and objects around you either phase into existence or phase out of existence. So you could have a wall that has this like Dweller Mask sort of like material on it, and you can jump through it. But if you toggle the Dweller Mask, you bump into it, and then you can have a wall that is solid, but if you activate Dweller Mask, it becomes like non-solid, you can go through it. So maybe you have multiple of these in a row where you need to toggle them on and off while you're making a jump. Of course, it shouldn't be too difficult. At some point, I'm gonna do an entire video about difficulty, but let's just say that everything you're doing right now shouldn't be too difficult. It should be fairly basic. So maybe that's something we can do. We can do that together with the theme. We can kind of fit that in. Nice. Now that you've come up, and of course you would do multiple blueprints like this. This was just one idea that you would have, like take a mechanic or anything that you know from the game and try to see if you can somehow fit it together with the theme. At this point, by the way, I forgot to mention this, but you can also mash together two different mechanics. Mash together Dweller Mask and springboards, springing up somewhere while toggling Dweller Mask to do some crazy stuff. Why not? Put that in there as well. But I can also fit that into the theme as well. Nice. Next up, now that you have all these ideas on what you want to do, we want to actually put that into like something that we can look at, because right now everything's still in our head, but now we can try and figure out how we actually put that into something physical that we can actually play through. So we take those ideas like Dweller Mask through multiple walls, and we try and see that, okay, maybe we have a platform here, walls over there, put them in your editor, another wall platform here, maybe there's something shooting at you from the side, maybe it's a corridor. Like, you can kind of come up with how to actually incorporate that into an actual physical challenge that you can play through. And then when you've come up with multiple of those, then you can actually try and define an actual scope for the level. How much of the level should be there? Do you want to have a big level, a small level? We're going to see at some point, I'm going to do another big video about that, about how big levels are, for the most part, actually really bad, and you should not do levels really big for the sake of being big. Don't do big levels. Why? I'm going to talk about that later. Unless you're like a professional level designer that has worked for like Nintendo for like 30 years, then maybe you can do big levels and pull them off like in Mario Odyssey. But apart from that, just don't do it. Don't do it, guys. Don't do big levels. Anyway, so you define a scope for the level, exactly how much of that you actually want it to be, and then you try and come up with some sort of basic progression through the level. Like, okay, I have this piece right here, this is a bit more difficult, let's put that towards the start. This piece right here, it's easier, and also sort of introduces the mechanic. You just jump through two walls in a row in a very controlled environment without any enemies. Put that at the start, and then later on the stage you can put the harder one. Nice, do that. So that's what I would say. You want to come up with some sort of basic progression that also makes sense, that becomes more difficult over time. It also makes sure that mechanics that get used later on have been introduced earlier. That's also really nice. You want to have some sort of flow. Flow is really nice when you have that. And you also want to make sure that you can use some sort of, like, or not some sort of, but in general, you want to have game design aspects help you along. Like, for example, you can use the lighting to make the player look. You can manipulate the line of the sight of the player by placing objects in specific places, for example, or also using the lighting together with that. You can use collectibles, for example, because players usually look at and go towards collectibles if they see them and they look collectible, like from like they think they can reach them. If you see a collectible and you think you can reach it, players would probably look towards it and then try and go towards it. You can use that as well to make sure that the progression of the stage flows a lot nicer. That's what I would usually say are like the basic step, but there's also some more steps. Like, I'm not going to talk about every single thing right now, but here's some bonus things you can do. For example, like you can look at interconnectivity between the different like building blocks that you've put in there. Maybe there's different paths you can go. maybe at some point you get a key and you backtrack to some other part. That's some weird stuff. You can think about how the flow should actually work out in there. You can put in bonus challenges where maybe you see that, oh, there's a collectible up there that's really hard to get, but maybe I want to do it. Maybe I want to have that bonus challenge to get that thing up there. Maybe you hide some secrets. Secrets are something that I would hide fairly late in development, because if you develop something around secrets, feels like the overall quality of the base level might get harmed on the way, so I don't know. Anyway, also another bonus would be, of course, like using fitting music and having a good color palette, but that's not really something where I can go to someone and be like, hey, this is how you do it. No, you just gotta find fitting music, and you just gotta have a good hand for how the color palette of the level should be. I mean, the color palette is something where you can just click on an object and be like, okay, let's make this object have a completely different color over here, and change some of the accents and highlights, and maybe it looks better now. I don't know. You can figure stuff out on your own, what looks good or doesn't look good. So yeah, I think that's it for most part for the like basics behind level design, and we're gonna go in. I don't know exactly which topic I'm gonna talk about when. Just at some point I'm going to talk about level size, I'm going to talk about level difficulty, I'm going to talk about flow and guiding the player around, something like that. Yeah, I think that's at least some of the 3 topics that I'm definitely going to talk about, and then a lot of other topics as well, probably. I'm going to use examples from games like Hat in Time, from Banjo-Kazooie. We're going to take a look at some Super Mario 64 ROM hacks, for example, and maybe some other games as well. And yeah, like X3D, like I mentioned. Yeah, maybe I'm going to try and make it more interesting than this like introductory thing right here, where I really just talk, and I'm gonna try and make it more visual as well, like I said, with the examples. And maybe I'm gonna do something like, look at me do this thing in this stage and compare it to this thing in this stage, with like having 2 videos next to each other. I don't know, I could do all sorts of things. Anyway, that was that. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We're gonna put the playlist for this in the description, which when I first upload this video it's gonna be empty, but yeah. Anyway, that's where I find the other videos. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll see you guys next time.